This is High School Not So Much a Musical, a podcast that takes you on a ride through the peaks and valleys of a high school journey. Here are your presenters, Nitin Jaladanki and Ayush Agarwal.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to High School Not So Much a Musical. Today, we're joined with Mr. Zave, a artist and photographer who started his career in Toronto. So, Mr. Zave, could you please talk about your career in Toronto as an artist and photographer and just give the listeners a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, no problem. First of all, thank you so much, both of you, for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here. My career as an artist began definitely in school. I actually went to an audition-based arts elementary school starting in grade 7, and that was like the creative arts. So it was a broad range of artistic programming. And then in high school, I went to an audition-based drama program. So it was specific to drama and theater. And I think the reason I took those programs was because I didn't feel like I fit in elementary school before that, and I felt much more understood, and the education was just more catered towards me in those arts programs. So I was really, really lucky that those programs existed, and I was able to be with people who operated more similarly to the way that I operated. And then I went to university after that, more for television and media. So I learned a little bit about how the media worked in general and television broadcasting in particular. And then after that, I worked at our public broadcaster in Canada, the CBC. And what was really cool about that was I learned how the news was made, and how it's changed over the years to be much more based on large news organizations that have a big control over what stories are being told and what stories aren't being told. And what I noticed was I was hungry to be back at a time where I was the one who was coming up with some of the ideas that were being shared in society rather than these big media organizations. And so after a few years working at the television station, I went solo as a photographer because I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to learn how to create my own income so that I could bring more of my ideas to life. And since then, I've been proudly independent and more independent by the day, so that some of the ways that I want the world to be seen can be shared.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that introduction. And it's pretty cool to see like the progression in your life, how, you started off just going to school. You didn't really feel as if like you fit in. So then like you switched to drama school and you instantly like loved it more. And then you switched to like news and you learned more about the news. And then now you're a photographer. So we'll get to all of those points, but let's take it piece by piece. And
Sure.
so at the beginning, you mentioned that like, oh, you went to school and you didn't really like it. And then you went to drama school. So I think like, especially nowadays, with COVID and everything, a lot of like teenagers and stuff, they might not, their mental health isn't that great. So like, do you think that like going into like an arts school or going and like doing something that's art related would like clear your mind and help or have any mental health benefits?
Absolutely. Is it Rishi?
Yeah, Rishi.
Rishi. So Rishi, thank you so much for that question, because I absolutely think that practicing some sort of an art form where you can express how you're feeling about the world in a creative way, in a way that can be shared with others, without it being super personal, with it being an independent creation aside from yourself, like a painting or a dance performance or a theater performance or a song performance. It doesn't have to be a performance either, but having something separate from yourself to express what you're feeling and what you're going through is such a powerful tool for us to not be holding on to all of the anger and the sadness and the pain, and even maybe some of the joy and some of the thrill of going through a global pandemic. Even if it seems miserable on the outset, you never know. Somebody could be going through a great time right now. You never know. And so it gives us the opportunity to express that and not be holding on to it. A close friend of mine says that emotions are energy in motion. And so when we're denying our emotions, what we're really doing is we're resisting the motion of energy in our body and in our interactions with others. And when we resist that energy in motion, we are actually we're blocking ourselves. We're blocking ourselves. We're blocking our societies. We're blocking our relationships. And what is really cool about art is it gives us the opportunity to unblock some of that.
Yeah, like well, it was emotions in motion, right? Like
Energy
oh,
in motion.
energy emotion. Yeah, I really like that because like I don't do drama or something like that, but I do participate a lot in music. Like I play guitar. I've been for like the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And I noticed that like if I'm kind of bored, I'm not feeling too well, I can literally, just put on my headphones, play my guitar, and like I won't even notice who's walking in and out of the house at that time. And
Wow.
like recently I've started like creating like riffs or just like a like simple like series of notes or like melodies that like I would hear in my head, because before I used to journal a lot, but then I don't have time for that. So I feel like creating stuff on my guitar, like basically just writing almost what's in my head, like it's really beneficial. And like I've experienced mental health benefits ever since I started picking up an instrument, and it's most likely the same for like arts or drama. So
Yeah, Rishi, I wonder when you say mental health, we talk about it a lot, but what does mental health actually mean? What does it mean to you, the mental health?
oh, that's a good question. Like I like mental health, I guess it's how you're feeling. Oh god, it's like uh see, it's different. Mental health, it's like how you're feeling at a certain point in time. Like let's say it's not if you're bored, but if it's like your thoughts or if your mind isn't in the right place. Like being bored and being depressed are like two completely different things. Like I feel like being bored isn't mental health, but like depression does deal with mental health, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely identify with that. Like I've felt boredom, I've felt depression, and what I found is when I feel what I call depression, it starts to resonate in my body. It starts to, be also pain, maybe in my shoulders, or pain in my lower back, or headaches regularly, or not wanting to get out of bed, like the inability to move. And so what I think that is just, it's just all this energy that is being piled up that has no place to go. So Rishi, when you talk about playing your guitar, you're letting your body be in that flow, and that flow of energy through your body, it makes you feel a connection, and it also makes you feel a movement, that and a release that prevents some of these these points of pain that start to accumulate in our body. And so it's amazing how mental health can quickly become problems can quickly become physical health problems.
yeah, like now that I got some time to think about it more, I feel like one of the biggest things, like especially teenagers nowadays, they associate with mental health is like their stress levels, right? And stress
Yeah.
can lead to a lot more things. But like especially, with COVID, we're not seeing our friends as much anymore. Especially like in high school, your workload is like insane. All the teachers like, oh, we're just preparing you for college. So yeah, I feel like when I play guitar, when I say mental health, I mean like my stress levels, they decrease a lot, and I'm like just in my zone doing my own thing.
Yeah, love that.
So like now that we're kind of in like the conversation about art and all kind of that, like as high schoolers, we're kind of forced to take like a history course every year. And in school, we learned about so many like cultural and art revolutions in the world. And especially in US history, such as like the Harlem Renaissance. And then this year I'm taking European history. So we learned about like the European Renaissance, the different types of art, such as like Baroque and then Rococo art, and then so many other types of cultural transformation. And one aspects of all these kind of revolutions, whether it be religious, is that there's always a shift in art. So why do you think art is so fundamental to like the core of these kind of societal revolutions? And how exactly does art play a role in depicting the history that we see now and that we learn about every year?
Is it Nitin?
Yep, it's Nathan. Yeah.
Nitin, that is an incredibly profound and beautiful question, and a question that they're asking at all levels of society. Ancient philosophers have asked similar questions. It's a brilliant question. How major transformations in history and major moments in history end up being depicted later as the artistic movements that come either at the same time or after them. And my answer to that question is, when I was younger and I took history classes, I remember, especially in the early years, like grade 6, it was a lot of names of generals and dates and moments of war, and really painful, difficult things for me to wrap my head around. And I also found them quite boring the way it was being shared. And not everybody feels this way, but for me, as an artistic thinker, I didn't feel connected to that history, and I didn't really care. And it made it really hard for me to do well in those classes. And so what art does is it gives us an opportunity to connect to human creativity, human moments, human feelings of the time through whatever was created. So whether it's a really striking painting that depicts a really important moment in history, or what somebody was feeling at the time, we can get into that. We can feel connected to that, and it can also connect people in the society, give them something to talk about aside from the pain. Let's say we're talking about COVID right now. It's like we're all so sick and tired of talking about the numbers and the hospitalization and also the conflicts in society around what all of us think is the right thing to do. And what's so great about art is it gives us an opportunity to reflect on all that without it being so real. We can take it and we can make it more abstract so that we don't have to be so focused on what's real about it. We can focus more on how we're feeling about it, how it's affecting, as we talked about, our mental health. And maybe we can connect with people who might be disagreeing with us about the details. We can connect around the feelings. And that's the power of art.
Okay, yeah. So, like I said in the beginning, like, now that we've touched upon like your background and like basically what mental health is and why art can fix it, let's like progress later in your life, if that makes sense. But so you mentioned you mentioned that you did some work relating to news and you got to learn like a lot about how news works. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Well, what I found really interesting working in the newsroom was that most of the stories that we were telling, we actually got from certain news services. So the news services are called Associated Press, Reuters, CNN is a news service, and there's a few other major news services. And what it is just a website where that all the news organizations around the world are subscribed to, and it feeds them with what to be talking about. And And what I found really interesting about that was that the the journalism piece was often missing. It was just they were sharing the stories that essentially they were being told to share. And for me, journalism is asking like, what's up with this? Finding out more, really kind of diving deeper and coming to a deeper sense of truth. Um, and there's great journalism in the world, but news, especially the 24-hour news that's always being churned out, they have to always have something that's going to grasp our attention, right? And I'm sure you've seen it with all sorts of clickbaity articles on the internet that are trying to grab your attention. When you're focused on grabbing people's attention rather than on really informing them and enriching their lives, then it can become quite dangerous. We saw that with Donald Trump. He was very good at grabbing people's attention, and all of a sudden, he became president of the United States. Attention grabbing can be an incredibly powerful tool, and we have to be very careful about how we're using it.
Yeah, I definitely agree because like even like in high school, there's so many like even when you think of like newspaper headlines or even like YouTube video titles that we watch, they're kind of made to like kind of draw us in, even if like a lot of it isn't true. So I think that's like a really important part that people need to understand. But I want to like shift to something that you've been doing, which is like the art workshops that you host. So I just want to talk about how you got the idea to do those, how those are going, and how people can get involved.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for asking. I've done a few different kinds of workshops, and it's constantly evolving the work that I'm doing. I actually developed right before the pandemic a presentation that I do in elementary schools and high schools called Secret Leaders. And what it is it's an hour long kind of interactive performance slash workshop where I go into the school, whether it's virtually now mostly or in person, pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. And what I do is I share about a new way of thinking about leadership. Because right now, leadership is a really hot topic. I'm sure you all know that a lot of the people in our society that used to be considered important, powerful leaders are being outed as, quite frankly, bad people, bad leaders, and they led in a way that maybe we're not so proud of. And so, Secret Leaders is about rethinking about what is leadership, right? Uh, art is connected to this because art is expression. And so maybe by sharing kind of what's in our heart, maybe by telling somebody how we feel about them in a positive way, maybe by by learning to tell our story, not somebody else's version of our story, and living the life we want to live, we're being leaders versus just getting into the front of the room and telling people what to do and telling people what what you think they should be doing. Maybe that's the old version of leadership, and maybe leadership is kind of something that happens a little bit more in secret. It isn't so bold and it isn't so aggressive. Maybe leadership is more of a softer, kinder trait. And so Secret Leaders is a workshop where I teach people about that. So that's one example of the arts workshops that I lead. And if you want to learn anything about the work I'm doing, you can always find me on Facebook or on Google or on Instagram. It's just Philip Zave. Just look up PhilipZave.
Yeah. So in these workshops, are you like mainly just teaching like like what's the age range? Like, is anyone welcome to join, or would it be like college students? What would it be like?
Well, Secret Leaders in particular is for elementary and high school students. But I also lead more kind of customized workshops for all different ages, right? Everybody is looking for something a little bit different depending on what part of life they're in and what they're focused on, how they're focused on growing. So I can lead workshops on the intuitive nature of photography, on finding the art in photography. And I also lead workshops on leadership, as I mentioned, and on just, broadening how you feel about yourself as an artist. So I'm always happy to and open to having a conversation about something that makes sense for whoever it is that I'm talking to.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of High School Not So Much Musical. Make sure to tune in to part 2 of our conversation with Mr. Zave, where we'll talk about his artwork, which will sell for $10 million. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. High School Not So Much a Musical is hosted by Ayush Agarwal and Nitin Jaladanki. Narration by Samhit Padala. Music from Louis Luang Relaxation Cafe, Tune Pocket, and Infraction. If you like the show, please recommend it to your friends and family. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.